The Call from the Dark. Before we begin, if you're brave enough to dive into the dark side of true crime, hit that subscribe button. Because after tonight, you might never look at a 911 call the same way again. It was just before dawn on May 1st, 2010, when a chilling 911 call echoed through the Suffolk County's emergency dispatch line. The voice on the other end wasn't calm or coherent. It was terrified. "They're after me," the young woman screamed. "There's somebody after me. Please help me." The dispatcher struggled to make sense of it. The line crackled with static, wind, and muffled shouting. It lasted 23 agonizing minutes. 23 minutes of pure panic. And then, silence. That woman was Shannan Gilbert, a 24-year-old escort who had been working through Craigslist, living in Jersey City, and hoping to save up enough money to leave the industry. But that night, she'd taken a trip that would become one of Long Island's darkest mysteries. Shannan had gone to meet a client in Gilgo Beach, a secluded, gated community along the south shore of Long Island. Her driver, Michael Pack, waited outside while she visited the client, a middle-aged man named Joseph Brewer. Brewer later told police that Shannan began acting strangely after some time, paranoid, anxious, and convinced that someone was trying to kill her. Neighbors would later describe hearing frantic footsteps outside their homes, followed by banging on doors and desperate cries for help. "They're trying to kill me," she shouted, but by the time police arrived at the quiet cul-de-sac, she was gone. It was as if the night had swallowed her whole. Detectives initially thought it was a case of a young woman under the influence who'd simply fled into the marshes. Brewer claimed he hadn't hurt her. The driver said he'd tried to calm her down, but she ran off before he could stop her. The officer, Sear, checked the area briefly that night, but found nothing. It might have ended there. Another missing person case in a system already overwhelmed with them. But in December 2010, 7 months later, a K-9 officer searching for Shannan stumbled across something he wasn't expecting. On the side of Ocean Parkway, not far from Gilgo Beach, his cadaver dog picked up a scent, the unmistakable trace of human remains. The first discovery was shocking enough, the skeletal remains of a woman wrapped in burlap. Within days, police found 3 more bodies, all young women, all sex workers, all left in similar fashion. The area became known as Gilgo Beach, and the mystery began to spiral into something far bigger than a single disappearance. Shannan's mother, Mari Gilbert, refused to believe her daughter's case was unrelated. She told every reporter who would listen, "Shannan didn't just vanish. Whoever killed those women, they took my daughter too." Investigators, however, weren't so sure. They insisted Shannan's disappearance might have been accidental. Maybe she'd wandered into the marsh and drowned. But the timing, the location, and the horrifying discoveries raised too many questions to ignore. Why did her 911 call last over 20 minutes? Who were the voices in the background, the men she seemed to fear? And why did she run from the only people who could have helped her that night? As detectives combed through hours of phone records and interviews, they uncovered a web of deceit among the men of Gilgo Beach. Neighbors contradicted each other. The client, Brewer, changed parts of his story. The driver, Pack, disappeared from public view. Everyone seemed to know just enough, and nothing more. When police finally recovered Shannan's belongings, her purse, jeans, shoes, and cell phone, they were scattered in the marshland about half a mile from Brewer's house. But her remains wouldn't be found for another year and a half. In December 2011, her skeleton surfaced in a thick patch of reeds, just yards from where search teams had walked before. The medical examiner ruled her death undetermined. Some evidence hinted at drowning, but others, especially a private autopsy later commissioned by her family, pointed to possible strangulation. The private pathologist even claimed signs of damage to the small bone in her neck, the hyoid, consistent with homicide. Still, the Suffolk County Police stuck to their conclusion: no foul play. Mari Gilbert didn't buy it. "My daughter was murdered," she said in televised interviews, her voice steady but burning with grief. "And they're covering it up because it leads to someone powerful." By 2012, the case had become a national obsession. The Gilgo Beach murders had unearthed a terrifying possibility: a serial killer operating for years along Long Island's coastline. The FBI joined the investigation. Dozens of potential victims were re-examined, Online sleuths picked apart every clue, every rumor, every inconsistency. But through all the noise, one fact remained impossible to ignore. It all began with a single 911 call. A woman's voice, terrified, pleading, and utterly alone, echoing through the early morning darkness of Oak Beach. And somewhere within that call, investigators believed, was the key to unsolved, raveling everything. Because the 911 recording wasn't just a cry for help, it was a map, a breadcrumb trail of fear and confusion that could lead to the killer. But what no one knew then was that the truth behind that call would soon shatter everything they thought they knew about the Gilgo Beach case. The shadows of Oak Beach. For most people, Oak Beach was paradise. Quiet, gated, wealthy. But after Shannan Gilbert's disappearance, paradise turned into a crime scene. The perfect lawns and white fences now stood behind yellow tape, while detectives moved methodically through every house, searching for something, anything, that could explain what happened that night. Inside the Suffolk County Police Department, the case had become a storm. One missing escort had led to the discovery of multiple bodies. The media called it the Long Island serial killer, but there was one person who refused to let Shannan's story get buried under that headline: her mother, Mari Gilbert. Mari wasn't rich or connected. She didn't have lawyers or influence, but what she did have was determination and fury. "If they won't find the truth," she told a reporter, "then I will." She began her own investigation, retracing her daughter's last steps, knocking on the same doors Shannan had run to that night, and confronting the same men the police were hesitant to question. The residents of Oak Beach didn't like attention. The community was small and tightly knit, mostly retirees, businessmen, and weekend homeowners. They said Shannan had been hysterical, maybe high, maybe paranoid, but Mari didn't believe it. Shannan had never sounded like that before. Something, or someone, had made her panic. When Mari pressed for the 911 tape to be released, she was told no. "It's evidence," the police said. "It could compromise the investigation." But years went by. Still no answers, no arrest, no justice. Behind closed doors, detectives were divided. Some believed Shannan was the killer's first victim, the one who escaped before being caught, the one whose desperate flight led them to the others. Others insisted her death was an accident, unrelated to the burlap-wrapped women found along Gilgo. It was a pattern too deliberate to ignore, but the killer had vanished, leaving behind only fragments, disposable phones, online ads, a digital ghost trail that led nowhere. When the FBI joined the investigation, they reopened every angle, and Shannan's 911 call became their focus. For the first time, federal analysts listened to the full recording. What they found was more than panic. There were distinct male voices, overlapping conversations, and sudden changes in tone. At times, Shannan's breathing quickened, as if she were running, then silence. One investigator set off the record. It sounded like she was being hunted. In 2014, the case took a darker turn. Mari Gilbert filed a civil lawsuit against Dr. Hackett, accusing him of wrongful death and obstruction. She claimed he drugged Shannan and covered up what really happened. The lawsuit didn't result in charges, but it kept the pressure on the police, and it kept the story alive in the public eye. That same year, a forensic expert re-examined Shannan's remains. The findings were unsettling, signs of trauma to the neck that couldn't be explained by drowning. It reignited the theory that she'd been strangled, possibly by the same killer who left the others along Gilgo Beach. Still, the Suffolk County Police refused to change their stance. They maintained that Shannan's death was not criminal. But something didn't add up. Late one night, Mari received an anonymous envelope in the mail. Inside were grainy photocopies of internal memos, references to a protected witness, deleted dispatch logs, and an unauthorized cleanup at Oak Beach. Whether they were authentic or part of a cruel hoax, she didn't know. But one line stood out. Audio discrepancy, 911 tape, segment 1242 to 1247, removed for security reasons. If true, it meant someone had tampered with the call. Mari's hands shook as she read it. "They erased her voice," she whispered. "They erased my daughter." By 2016, the media's spotlight had shifted, but Mari kept fighting. She appeared in documentaries, podcasts, talk shows, demanding that the full 911 recording be made public. She believed that buried somewhere in that call was the identity of the killer, or the person who wanted him protected. But tragedy struck again. In 2016, Mari Gilbert was killed by her younger daughter, Sarah, who suffered from severe mental illness. It was a devastating end to a mother's relentless pursuit of justice. The case lost its loudest voice, yet the story wasn't over. Years later, when a new Suffolk County task force reopened the Gilgo investigation, they found something chilling in the archives: a set of forensic photos taken near the marsh where Shannan's body was found. In the background of one image, a shoe print, large, distinct, and facing away from the water. It didn't match Shannan's shoes, and it wasn't listed in the original evidence report. The man behind the mask. For over a decade, Shannan Gilbert's disappearance haunted Suffolk County. 11 victims, one unsolved case, dozens of suspects, hundreds of unanswered questions. But by 23, the story that had gone cold for years suddenly reignited when a name emerged from the shadows: Rex Heuermann. A 59-year-old architect from Massapequa Park, married, 2 kids, a quiet suburban life. He looked like anyone else. But beneath the surface, investigators found a monster meticulously hiding in plain sight. It began when a newly formed Gilgo Beach task force re-examined old evidence using modern technology. Burner phone data, car GPS logs, and cell tower records were digitally cross-matched, and one number stood out. It was a burner phone that had contacted multiple victims before they vanished. When the data was plotted on a map, every signal ping formed a pattern, all circling one location: Heuermann's office in Midtown Manhattan. Detectives began surveillance immediately. They watched him leave work, take the train home, stop at the same bagel shop every morning. He seemed normal, but DNA found on discarded pizza crust matched samples taken from one of the Gilgo Beach victims. That's when they knew. They finally had him. When police searched Heuermann's home, the discoveries were horrifying. Inside his basement, investigators found an arsenal, over 200 firearms, including rifles and shotguns, and a hidden room filled with locked filing cabinets, maps, and IDs. His internet searches painted a darker picture: Long Island serial killer victims, how body decomposition works, cell tower tracking, and Gilgo Beach police investigation. It was as if he'd been following every move, every update, for years, keeping score from the shadows. When Heuermann was arrested, the public was stunned. His coworkers described him as quiet, methodical, and oddly intense. Neighbors said he was private, rarely seen outside, but the victims' families knew what it meant: the beginning of justice, at last. Still, for Mari Gilbert's surviving relatives, the question lingered: was this the man connected to Shannan too? Police maintained that Shannan's death was separate, an accident. But once Heuermann's arrest made national headlines, new analysts began comparing his known activities with the night Shannan vanished. There were overlaps: phone pings near Oak Beach, online ads targeting escorts in the same area, even vehicle sightings matching Heuermann's model of Chevrolet Avalanche, the same type described by a witness years earlier. None of it was proof, but it was enough to reopen old wounds. Forensic experts revisited Shannan's 911 call, the full 22-minute recording that had remained sealed for over a decade. When it was finally released in 22, it shocked even the most seasoned investigators. You could hear the raw terror in her voice, the panic, the confusion. "They're after me," she said. "Help me, please." Multiple male voices echoed in the background. At one point she screamed, "Stop!" followed by heavy footsteps and the rustle of grass. Then silence. The dispatcher tried to reach her again, but the call had already dropped. To this day, no one has confirmed exactly who those voices belonged to, but some experts believe one of them, deep, steady, unnervingly calm, matched a tone eerily similar to Heuermann's own. In July 23, Heuermann was charged with the murders of 3 women, Megan Waterman, Amber Costello, and Melissa Barthelemy, all found along Gilgo Beach. Prosecutors called him a predator who planned each killing with precision. He used burner phones, disposable email accounts, and fake IDs to lure victims. Each time a new victim disappeared, he returned to their online profiles afterward, taunting investigators by keeping the numbers active, checking for updates, as if reliving the crime. The evidence was overwhelming: DNA, cell records, fibers, and Google searches that detailed every step of his obsession. But Shannan's name wasn't on the list of official victims. Not yet. For Shannan's family, it didn't matter. Her 911 call had started the investigation that led to the discovery of all the others. Without her panic, the Long Island serial killer might still be free. In many ways, she became the accidental whistleblower of one of the most disturbing serial cases in American history. Mari Gilbert had always said her daughter's voice would expose the truth, and in the end, she was right. Even in death, Shannan's desperate call brought justice to women who had been forgotten. Today, the Gilgo Beach case remains partially unsolved. Hireman sits behind bars, awaiting trial. Prosecutors continue to search for links connecting him to additional victims, including Shannan. The FBI still considers her death suspicious, and investigators have hinted that new forensic developments could soon bring clarity. Oak Beach remains quiet again. The same roads, the same marshland, the same uneasy silence at night. But for those who remember, the place will never feel the same. Every gust of wind off the bay carries whispers of that night: the girl who ran for her life, the mother who refused to be silenced, and a killer who thought he'd never be found. Epilogue. In documentaries and podcasts today, Shannan Gilbert is often called the first cry for help of the Gilgo Beach murders. Though her death remains shrouded in mystery, it's undeniable that her bravery, her final call, shattered the illusion of safety and exposed a monster hiding in plain sight. When asked why she keeps the case open, one detective said quietly, "Because the 911 call doesn't lie. Someone was chasing her. And until we find out who, this story isn't over."